You're leaving your old life behind to start a new life with no certainty about how it will actually unfold.
I'm Sam G, a triple registered architect who has practiced across South Africa, Australia, and the USA. This is your design passport. Real stories, practical pathways, and global design ideas to help you build a career and a life that travels with you. Ready? Let's stamp your passport.
Today's episode is extra special because I'm joined by someone who isn't just a brilliant real estate agent, she's also one of my closest friends, and one of the very first people who helped me feel grounded when I moved to Australia. When my husband and I were navigating the overwhelming process of buying our first home in Eaton's Hill, we met Bonnie. At the time, she was the agent helping us through all the unfamiliar steps, the inspections, the questions, the stress, and she did it all with so much kindness, clarity, and genuine care. What started as a professional interaction quickly became the beginning of a friendship I treasure to this day. We keep in touch, and years later, I actually had the joy of designing her current office space, which was such a full circle moment. Bonnie came in with a strong vision for aesthetics, spatial flow, and how she wanted her team to feel in the space. And together, we created something we're both incredibly proud of. I'm talking to someone who has walked alongside me in my Australian journey, someone who's helped countless people find their footing in a new country, and someone who understands both the personal and the practical sides of moving your life to Australia. In this episode, Bonnie's going to take us inside the realities of renting and buying in Australia, what's different, what's surprising, what newcomers should prepare for, and how to make smart choices when everything feels foreign. Bonnie, welcome to your design passport. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you for inviting me, Sam, other side of the world.
So, Bonnie, we met because you helped my husband and me buy our first Aussie home. Do you remember that experience from your side and what stood out?
I do remember it like it was yesterday, and it still makes me chuckle to this day. So I never actually met you first. I actually met Justin first. He came to a private inspection, which we booked in, and it was the property you eventually bought. And it had this beautiful balcony on the top floor. So while I was waiting for Justin to arrive, I'm opening up the doors and stand out at the balcony, and I look out and I can see this car driving up to the street, and then he parks the car in the wrong direction, goes into his boot, starts picking things up, closes his boot, and then runs up to the front door with his laptop, his phone, his GPS, pretty much everything, the whole contents of his car to the house. And I'm like, what is he doing? Very strange. So I went downstairs and I said, "Hi, Justin, I'm Bonnie. How are you?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm good. What's with all your items? Why are you bringing all your items up here?" He's like, "Well, I don't know the area at all. It could be unsafe. I just bring everything with me, because I'm from South Africa, and that's what you do in South Africa." I was like, "Oh, well, you don't need to do that here." I said, "So probably drop your stuff back to the car, obviously lock it up, and then we can look at the house." He's like, "Oh, okay." So that was my first impression of Justin. He was overcautious of his belongings. So I went back, locked everything in the car, and then he came back to the property. But it made me chuckle because you only see that happen now and again. And that's one of those stories I always remember in my head. But it's something that when you're new to a country and you don't know the areas and you don't know how safe it is, you are extra cautious. He didn't have to do it moving forward because I assured him it was quite a nice, safe family area and all his belongings would be safe. So that was my first recollection of Justin.
And then what's the very first thing people leaving to Australia are surprised by in the housing market?
I think for a lot of people who move over here are probably more surprised with the extreme cost of buying, but also the fierce competition of purchasing, both in the sales and rental market. Like both markets are pretty fierce at the moment. And that's obviously driven by a severe housing crisis. There's just not enough stock to service the amount of people that want to buy or want to rent. So new arrivals who are often trying to secure a property find it very difficult, and they can find it quite expensive, especially if they've come from another country where the cost of property is a lot less. But it's also difficult for new arrivals to figure out where they actually want to live. Obviously, we've both been in that situation ourselves. You're from South Africa. I'm from England originally, and you know your areas like the back of your hand. You grew up there, but when you come to a brand new country and all you have is yourselves and Google, and you're relying on people's reviews on the Facebook pages, it's not until you're actually physically here and getting a feel of those locations that you can then process and then possibly get a better understanding of what location you want to be in. But for me, doing that move myself, and being in the same situation, I'd always recommend anybody to potentially rent for 6 to 12 months in a location they're potentially wanting to live in, so that they can get a feel for that suburb and whether it's suitable for them. But to answer the question, it does take a while to actually find that right property for them to live in.
I think that's quite sound advice. I definitely relate to the expensive prices. We were pretty shocked with prices. What we did when we first arrived is we stayed with some family for a couple of months and kind of like assessed the situation and figured out public transport. Public transport, I must say, in Australia is very, very good. And if you are close to public transport, definitely feasible to use to go to and from work. It is a little bit more expensive than what I was anticipating, but I think because we stayed with the family first and we kind of figured that out, it did make it easier to settle on the final location of where we did buy our house.
If you're lucky enough to have family or friends, then you heavily rely on them for that support and ideas on which locations you should live in. But a lot of our clients that we have worked with don't have the pleasure of having family or friends here. They come over on their own. And I think a lot of them do rely heavily on the Facebook groups. There's like a group called Brits in Brisbane. There's always lots of people asking, what's it like to live in Sandgate? What's it like to live here? What's it like to live there? And it's okay listening to people's perspective. In my opinion, it's better to rent for that short period.
And then for international architects and designers who arrive with little rental history, what makes a strong application?
I mean, there's so many tenants who are moving from different countries and different states. For me, it doesn't really matter where you come from, as long as your application is completed correctly, i.e., you've got the affordability there, so you can provide evidence that you can afford the rent per week. And if you are new to the country and, for example, you are seeking work and you don't have any work lined up, if you have any savings, then you can always supply a screenshot of your savings account. Obviously, you delete your BSB and your account details. We don't want to see that. The affordability is really important because without the affordability, we can't accept your application. If for whatever reason you can't afford the rent and you go into hardship, if the application is looked into further detail and it turns out that the property manager put you in and there was evidence that you couldn't afford it in the first place, then the onus is on that property manager. So for us, as long as the affordability is there and you can prove that you can afford it, then that's step one. It's really important you get strong references as well. So again, if you're new to the country and you don't have any strong relationships in this country, rely on past employers that you worked with. You can get references from your family, landlord back in your country. And I also would recommend a really compelling cover letter as well. So it's highlighting who you are as a family, whether you have any children, if you have any pets, what's the pet's name, attach a photo of the family. It's always good for us to know who we're meeting and who we're wanting to put in that property. And also fast communication and verification of ID. So driving license or a passport, and also payment history as well. So if you have been renting in the past in another country, you can always supply a ledger to that property manager. And at least we can see that there's consistent payments each week and you haven't been in arrears. And the reason I say to ensure that you have all of that ready to go is because with any application we're getting for rentals, depending on your price, of course, you're getting anywhere between 20 to 50 applications per property. If you're looking for properties which are, say, under $500 a week, we'd be looking at close to 70 applications for that property. So your chances of getting a rental property is difficult, but it's achievable if you ensure that your application is completed fully and the affordability is there.
Okay, so that's something that you mentioned there was price per week. So that was a very foreign concept to us coming in because we always only got paid per month and we were used to monthly prices. That was something we had to get used to where things were either on a weekly or a fortnightly basis.
Yeah.
And then are there any signs or things that you would pick up from candidates where you think, oh, this is a bad move, this is a warning sign, I don't think that I should rent to these people?
So that's where the rental references come into play. If you rented previously in another country, then my advice would be is to get that property manager to put together a cover letter with their details, which you can attach to your application. Otherwise, if you leave it open, the property manager looking at your application would then have to go to the effort of contacting them directly. And obviously, if it's a different country, time zone, it might take that property manager 3 to 4 days for them to get back to us to say, yes, they are who they say they are, they're decent people, they pay on time. But by the time that person gets back to us, we've probably already accepted somebody. My suggestion would be is get all your ducks in a line, get all your paperwork ready, get all your references, get a really good reference from your property manager, get your rental ledger and attach it to your application. They're all online now, most of them. You can do applications the old school way by downloading the form, filling it out and passing it to the property manager, but the quickest way is online. But for us, our red flags are anything from, they basically star you. So your 5 is your top star. 5 is top. 1 is don't bother. So if we get property managers ranking you 3 out of 5, then we're like, why is that? And then we can see that you might have been in arrears a couple of times. That's when we talk to that property manager and just verify. And they might say, yeah, they were good, but they just missed a couple of payments out of the 12 months. So it's really just verifying the character of that tenant by chatting with that property manager. Other things could be that they've been in and out of work consistently. So if their job history is chopping and changing, and they've been in one job for 4 months and then the next job's 3 months and the next job's 2 months, obviously the question is where's the stability? Could they lose their job again? Could they afford it next time? So there's all these things you take into consideration. The one thing we look at is definitely the references from that property manager.
And what are the unexpected costs people don't plan for when renting or buying?
I think for renting, it's obviously the 4 weeks bond that you've got to pay. So most rental properties in our area are ranging from anything from 600 to about 700 per week. So as the tenant, you'll have to pay 4 weeks bond, and then you then have to pay 2 weeks upfront as well. So effectively, you've got to have 6 weeks of rent ready to pay that property manager as soon as you've signed your general tenancy agreement. You've then got your contents insurance on the property. You've got your moving costs. And then after that, it's pretty much plain sailing for a renter. You may have to pay your own water. And again, that just depends whether the property has a separate water meter, in which case, if it does, you pay your usage. You don't pay the entire bill. And then when you vacate, it's your responsibility to pay for the bond cleaner, a carpet cleaner, and if you have pets, then you have a flea treatment as well. So depending on the size of the property, your bond clean could be anywhere from $700 up to $1,500. So that's sort of the costs for renting. For buying, that's going to be more. So you've got your stamp duty to take into consideration, your lender's mortgage insurance. That's if you have, less than 20% deposit, you may be stung with LMI. You've got building and pest inspections you have to take into consideration when you're purchasing your property. That will be anywhere in where we work. It will be anywhere between $500 up to $700 for a building and pest. And you've got your legal fees. So you engage a conveyancer or a solicitor to purchase. That could be anywhere between $1,200 to $1,800. Then you've got your moving expenses. And then moving forward, you've got your council rates, your water rates, body corporate fees if you are in a body corporate. And then obviously you've got your contents and your building insurance. And insurance policies have increased a lot over the last few years.
And then what's happening in the Brisbane, Moreton Bay, and Eaton's Hill market right now that newcomers should know of? So those are the areas that you focus on.
So the area that I service is Moreton Bay, which is North Brisbane. That is showing very strong buyer demand, particularly from families seeking larger homes, so 4 bedrooms plus an office. And it's driven by obviously population growth, migration, and also the fact that a lot of families that are currently living in Brisbane, especially after COVID or during COVID and after COVID, a lot of these families now have the ability to work from home. So a lot of those families who may have lived a little bit close to the city, for example, on much smaller blocks, have then considered moving further afield to purchase a much bigger home for their family because there's not the constant back and forth to the city for work. We do have a lot of movement from a lot of different buyers from Brisbane moving into that Moreton Bay region for that lifestyle appeal and also the transport links as well. Median sale price in Southeast Queensland, it varies from property type and also region, but from late 2025, the median sale price was anywhere between $1.5 million to about 1.15 mil, and that was across sort of Brisbane area. And what's also helping things as well is the 2032 Olympics. There's been a lot of growth with infrastructure. So you got your Cross River Rail. They're also doing a lot of work towards the city. They're putting a lot of money into infrastructure and transport ready for the Olympics. So there's a lot of places in that Wollongabba, Kangaroo Point pockets where a lot of investors are looking in to try and capitalize on that for when the Olympics do arrive. But what we're seeing at the moment is a large range of buyers from different locations of Brisbane. We're starting to see a lot of people from interstate. Last year, 2025, we started to see a lot of people from Adelaide and Canberra moving in. Melbourne and Sydney have dropped off a little bit. I believe that those sort of buyers are heading more towards the sunny coast and the Gold Coast. But a lot of our clients from interstate were from Adelaide and Canberra. We're seeing a lot of people from New Zealand relocating to Brisbane as well. We always get an influx of buyers from England and also South Africa. We do have a large range of people coming in, not as many investors. The investor market has dropped a little bit because the property prices have gone up that much. The rent per week has gone up, but it doesn't marry up. So a lot of people would be in negative equity. So they won't be buying. They buy in the cheaper areas. What we have seen a change in is buyer's agents. So there's a lot of them out there at the moment, servicing and helping their clients. But their clients have changed as well. So before COVID, a lot of our buyer's agents would be working solely with investors. And what we're seeing now is that those buyer's agents, most of their clients are now owner occupiers. We're seeing anywhere to be 80 groups at an open home on a Saturday. and multiple offers each weekend as well. So days on market is either anywhere from 24 hours up to about 7 days. That's how quick it is.
And if someone's preparing to move to Australia in the next 6 months, what's your number one piece of advice for them?
Embrace the adventure. That would be my number one advice. It's undoubtedly one of the most nerve-wracking and most stressful things that you will ever do. And you'll vouch for that, Sam. And you're leaving your old life behind to start a new life with no certainty about how it will actually unfold. But if you truly embrace what Australia has to offer and you enjoy the lifestyle and you stay focused on building your future, you'll one day look back and you'll wonder why you never took the leap years ago.
For those people who aren't familiar with the process, take them through your typical Saturday open home.
Saturday open homes, we call them game days. That's the day that you sell. That's the day where you get to meet all of your buyers. Your Monday to Friday is talking to those buyers and getting them to that open home. And you have a good chat with them during the week. And then you finally get to meet that buyer on a Saturday. And they could very well be your buyer. Open homes are very quick. They're 30 minutes. The normal buyer is in our property maybe 5 minutes and then they make an offer, which still, surprises me to this day. Coming from England, it's very different. Back in the day, you never had open homes. You did by appointment. I never worked in real estate back in the UK, but when we sold our home, we didn't have open homes. It was by appointment. You'd look at the property at least 3, 4, 5 times before you made your decision. But over here, it's different. You have half an hour. You check everybody in. They walk around. If they like it, they take an offer form. And then if they like the home, they put the offer forward and send it to us. And then we normally call them back in the afternoon, see if they do want to proceed with the purchase of the home and negotiate on their behalf to try and secure them the property. And if they're lucky, they may be the only person that has submitted an offer on the home that day. But you've got to be very lucky because most properties are getting multiple offers these days. Our weekends are pretty busy. Half an hour open home. We give ourselves another half an hour to get to the next property and then the same process again. There's 3 of us on site. There's myself, my colleague and our broker. We ensure the home is looking the best it can be. We talk to all our clients and make them feel comfortable and answer as many questions as a buyer has to give them as much guidance as possible on the property and also the location.
That was actually something that surprised me when we put in the offer on our house. It was on a Saturday. We were expecting a response from you and the buyer probably on Monday, but we got a phone call from you later on that evening and we were like, what the hell? And by the end of, well, I wouldn't even say by the end of the night, but like early evening, we had pretty much had our offer accepted and we were almost homeowners.
Yeah. And I suppose it depends on how each agent operates their business. But for me, I was in your shoes at one stage where I was buying a home and I understand how stressful that can be. And especially if you love that home that much and you knew there were competition with other people, you're not going to sleep well that night knowing that there's other people that want that home as well. So for me, if the offer's good, the conditions are good, the owner's happy, the buyer's happy, why prolong it? If everyone's happy, get it locked in. It's not like the olden days where we had to print off a contract and meet you and then meet the seller. It's all digital now. So as soon as it's agreed, the contract's sent straight to the buyer to sign, straight to the seller to sign. It's dated, it's locked in. So for us, you've got to strike while the iron's hot, but you've also got to treat your buyer and your seller with the same respect. So for us, if we can get the deal done that night, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, I'll do it. That's what our sellers are employing us to do.
And you've worked with so many families and newcomers. What's a moment that's really stayed with you and stood out?
So this question is hard because there's not one thing that stands out. Apart from Justin, obviously, carrying all his belongings up the driveway. That one definitely sticks out. I think it's just meeting everyone from different walks of life and understanding what's brought into the area and trying to give them as much guidance, help, and support so that they don't feel alone. We've got a good team. We've got a really good broker, a fantastic conveyancer, awesome building and pest inspector. So for me, if it's anyone really, regardless of whether they're new to the country or not, we just want to make sure that the buyer's as comfortable as possible in buying that home. And as long as the buyer's happy and the seller's happy, then I'm happy. And I suppose it's keeping the relationships. That's what I really love about the industry. You go on a journey with this buyer and you get to meet their family and you see their excitement and you keep in touch and you watch their family grow. And that's what I like about it. I've got one client, and one of my clients, she was my very, very first buyer. And we chat every couple of months. We go out for coffee. I've watched her kids grow. Her kids now have kids of their own. And so that's really lovely to have that relationship with someone who was initially a buyer and then turns out to be a friend. A bit like our situation, I didn't know you, you didn't know me. And the minute we met, that was it. We clicked. So I wouldn't have had the opportunity if I didn't get to help you purchase your first home. So for me, there's lots of different things that are memorable for my job, but I think it's the relationships that you keep going is what I hold dear for my job anyway.
Oh, that's lovely, Bon. And what do you wish more people would ask before committing to either a rental or buying a home?
I think with buying in particular, especially for newcomers, they need to do a little bit more research on the purchasing process. There's agents out there that will see those buyers coming a mile off and will see the inexperience and will probably know they're in need of a property. And due to the excitement, they probably say a little bit too much to the agent, and the agent grasps it and probably doesn't do the right thing by that buyer, i.e., they may pressurize them to sign a contract quickly. They may not complete the contract correctly and have things missing, such as inclusions, exclusions. They may have things that they should have disclosed to that buyer, but the buyer didn't have the experience to ask the question. Unfortunately, with any industry, there's agents that only are motivated by money and closing the deal quickly. Whereas with my business structure and how I operate is that I need to tell my buyer everything and be upfront and honest and ethical. And if there's something that isn't right, then we tell them. And the contract is correct and legal. And so you feel 100% comfortable and confident with us, because next time you sell your home, you're going to be more than likely going with us rather than bad mouthing us and saying we did you wrong. So for me, it's ensuring that you do a little bit more research before buying. Maybe chat to a couple of solicitors as to what you have to put in your contract, or chat with multiple agents who you feel comfortable with and asking them to have a look at your contract that you're going to be signing before you commit. And the reason I say that is I've got a few clients and people I've met along my journey who have come to me after they've signed a contract with another agency, and I've reviewed that contract and it's not in their favor, and it can be very costly to that buyer. So buyers have to do research, in which case, I mean, if there's a pool, is there a pool safety certificate? And if there isn't, who's actually putting that in? Is that going to be the seller or is it the buyer's cost? If there's solar panels, have the solar panels been paid off? Because if it hasn't been paid off, the onus is on the buyer. Is there any renovations that have been done? And where's the waterproofing certificates? Has the garage been approved with council if it's an add-on? There's all these different things that your buyer doesn't ask, and it can actually bite them on the butt when they come to sell themselves. It can be very costly. So just make sure you do your research and before you rush into buying anything.
Okay. So if someone lands in Australia with zero idea of where to start, what is step one?
Get all the important stuff done first, like your Medicare and your bank account and things like that. I remember we landed in Australia on the 18th of December. And the minute we landed, we got our driving license straight away, because this is something I didn't know until I landed, was that the Aussies have really long holidays over Christmas. So they normally shut the doors on the 19th of December, and you'll be lucky to even get anyone get back to you until the 19th of January, actually probably even the 28th of January. So for me, coming into the country on the 18th of December, hoping I could get everything done in time, yeah, no, definitely not. Driving license we got quickly, but everything else we had to wait for. Anyone that's looking to move over during that Christmas period to emigrate, then just remember most of the services will be closed for about 4 weeks. All the important stuff, obviously accommodation is important. So whether you can stay with family, Airbnb might be the first option. You might have to get an Airbnb for maybe 6 to 8 weeks until you've secured yourself a little rental car, and then finding work. And unless you've got work already lined up and you're moving for work, that's great. But if you're coming over with just your suitcase, just make sure you've got enough funds to keep you going for a good 6 months, I would say, because it does take a while for you to secure work if you haven't got anything lined up. And then if you then are looking to purchase, realestate.com is a great starting point. Looking at properties on that website, you can sign up to that platform. You can decide on what areas you do like. They'll send you alerts of what new properties have come on, what properties have sold, and how much for. I would always suggest talking to a broker regarding your borrowing options, because obviously there's lots of different options for first time buyers. There may be restrictions with what you can do with your visa. And then when you are looking physically going to inspections, talk to as many real estate agents as possible and just get a feel for what areas you do like, and go to as many inspections as possible. And also don't forget to go to the beach for a bit, have a barbecue, and just embrace the Aussie lifestyle.
All right, Bonnie. It's time for our signature moments, the passport stamp question. Think of your career as a passport. What's the stamp that changed you, shaped you, or surprised you the most?
I spent over 10 years of my life back in the UK in commercial radio. So I was a radio geek, and that was all I knew. I'd trained in that, embraced it, loved the media industry, and gave that up to move to Australia. Luckily, I was able to get back into that industry in Brisbane and had the opportunity to work at a radio station for about 6 to 7 months. But it became very clear that the role wasn't really what I expected. And I faced quite a defining decision, which had to be my own decision. Do I remain comfortable doing what I'm doing, or do I take a risk and begin a brand new career? I chose the challenge in 2014. I arrived in 2013, by the way, late 2013. So in June, July 2014, I entered the real estate industry. Didn't know what I was doing. Never did any sales in my life. The principal at the time took me on. He believed in me, but I didn't really believe in myself. So I worked and worked and worked. and built my experience from the ground up. The rest I would say is history. I've been working in real estate since 2014. And I think what surprised me the most was that if you've got a dream, follow it and stick to your path and you'll eventually get there. So about 3 years ago, I was offered the opportunity to open up my own agency. I'd always been a sales agent working under a principal. Pretty much did everything myself anyway. Built up a very good client base. So I took the leap to do everything myself, which at the time was very nerve-wracking because obviously there was COVID, there was lots of chops and changes within the industry, and financially it would have been a very big risk if it backfired. But I stuck with it, found a really lovely premise to hold my office. It wasn't great. I had a vision. I met with a brilliant architect. I can pass the details on if you like. And together we sat down and had many coffees, trying to wrap my head around what the space would look like. And after lots of chops and changes, we both created this beautiful space that I now call my office. And within that space, each agent's got their own office. We've got a beautiful kitchen with a gin bar, a beautiful chandelier. We went on a lighting trip, didn't we? We were looking at all these lights. She knew, like Sam knew what I wanted. You knew what I wanted. I loved it. It was such a fun day. And I had a vision in my head what I wanted. You had a vision in your head what you thought I wanted. And so we went looking at all these light shops. And then you were like, Bon, I've got this one shop I want to take you to, which was Coco Republic. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's quite expensive in there, but we'll have a look. And I remember you were looking around and I went up the stairs and I went, that's it. And then as you looked, you went, that's the one I thought you were going to have. So we spent all day looking. We could have just gone to Coco first and just got it done. But in true Bon and Sam style, we just spent the day giggling, eating an amazing croissant. I think we had an amazing croissant that day. Looked at some beautiful lights and then we ended up getting this lovely cocoa light. It's stunning. But I didn't actually realize how heavy it was when we bought it. And it wasn't until we had the builder there to install it. And he only put 2 pieces of wood in the ceiling to support it. And as I walked in, I thought, I don't know whether that will hold the light. So he said, well, how heavy is it? I was like, I don't know. Just had looked online and I'm like, oh, that's heavy. And I remember he rang up my husband, Rich, and he says, you need to tell your wife to return this light because this light won't hold. And I remember Rich saying, you know, she definitely won't. You can't tell her to return that light. That's the light she found with Sam. No chance. So poor Rich had to get into the roof space, chain up the roof just to hold this beautiful chandelier light that both me and Sam chose. So I think the defining moment was actually, I know it sounds stupid, but it took a year to get that office done, like repainted, the structure, everything. It took ages. And I think the defining moment was actually putting the little glass chandeliers. Must have been 50 pieces of chandelier glass on the chandelier at 10 o'clock at night. And I'm literally shaking, just trying to not smash these little glass pieces of like crystal. And I'm like looking at this light and I'm like, excuse the French, holy shit. Like, we've done it. I can't believe I've come off the plane on the 18th of December 2013 with a suitcase and $20,000, if that, which was gone within a month because of the car and everything and all your expenses. So having a job in radio for 6 months, which I hated, it wasn't what I wanted, and then jumping into a totally different career. And then 3 years later, 3 years ago, opening up an office, like you don't have the opportunity normally. So I feel very lucky to have got to that stage, but everything happens for a reason. I was meant to meet you. We were meant to have that friendship. You were meant to design my office. Yeah, it's crazy. So, all that hard work and labor from not just myself, you, Rich, everyone around us who built the office. Now I've gone into a new area of real estate, which was something I wanted to do, but the little voice in my head was saying, don't do it just yet. You can't do it yet. It's property management. Petrified of it, I was. It's a very demanding job. And 12 months ago, I started property management. So we've just got over 103 rental properties that I manage with my beautiful niece, my amazing brother-in-law. It's a little family business. So we do rentals and then we do sales as well with my amazing agent, Jane, and the support of Joe as well. So collectively, it's been a journey, but it doesn't feel like it's a drawn out journey, if you know what I mean. I feel like we've only just arrived in Australia. I know it sounds stupid, but to create something like that in such a short space of time, I do wonder what the next 10 years will bring. So just have to watch this space.
Well, it's been nothing but a pleasure watching you grow as an individual and our friendship grow and bloom. I have no doubt that our friendship is going to continue blossoming over the next 100 years. As long as this world will have us, we'll be blossoming, just the two of us.
Exactly.
And if anyone wants to follow you on Instagram or find out more about you or reach out to you for property advice in the Brisbane area, what are your details and how can they find you?
So the best thing they can do is Google Bonnie Worth Rain and Horn or Bonnie Worth Eaton's Hill. So I'll pop up on there. The office is Rain and Horn Eaton's Hill / Albany Creek. Instagram and Facebook I do have, so I'll send you those details which you can share. But you can mostly get me on my mobile. I live on that. But yeah, mobile is the best way to get in contact. If you need any help with selling, renting, finance, our broker Joe works in our office as well. So he can definitely give you some advice on your finances and what you can and can't do. But even if you are new to the country and you just need some advice, you may not want to be buying or renting or anything like that straight away. But if you just want someone to talk to about, moving, and just call me. I'm happy to have that conversation. I've been there. I've done the move. I know what it feels like. And just you can reach out anytime.
Well, Bonnie, thank you for being here, not just as an expert, but as a friend who played a real role in my own journey of finding home in Australia. Thank you very much.
If you're listening to this while navigating a move or sitting in the middle of one, I hope this conversation reminded you that finding home isn't something you rush. It's something you build, slowly, sometimes awkwardly, often imperfectly. What Bonnie shared today isn't just about real estate or logistics. It's about giving yourself permission to be new, to take your time, and to trust that belonging comes from lived experience, not from having everything figured out. If this episode resonated, I'd invite you to sit with it for a moment. Maybe notice what home means to you right now, in this season of your life. And if you know someone who's rebuilding, relocating, or quietly wondering if they made the right move, this might be an episode worth sharing with them. Thank you so much for listening to Your Design Passport. Wherever you are in the world and whatever you're building next, I'm really glad you're here.